camp, obviously, I don't look at camp as ending until Saturday scrimmage. So we get through scrimmage 2. I would consider that the close of our camp. Unfortunately, our academic calendar doesn't match up perfectly with what we got going on. So school will start for the players tomorrow. They're getting their books. They're back to being student athletes, and it's hard to do that in camp early on. So we get them for a lot more time up until tomorrow, and makes it a little bit tighter schedule for us. But progress has been good. Wouldn't say that the first scrimmage was really up to the standard or our expectations. We did not have a lot of enthusiasm, didn't play to the level that I think we need to play to. But good news is I got another chance this Saturday and really every day to go out and practice. I have been pleased with like all the details that go into the leadership in terms of like showing a younger player how to do it. Guys are coaching guys. Guys are on time. We must have 6,000 checks and balances in the last 2 weeks of what time you got to be somewhere, and the guys have been great about that, which says a lot about them as people. But we got a long way to go as a football team. We are nowhere near where we're close to where we need to be. I feel like we have less depth than we've ever had, and that's kind of a common theme talking to other coaches I talk to. I call it the deterioration of football, because every year we've been here, I feel like we've had more players capable of going in and play winning football, and every year that goes down. So we've got to keep working to increase that number.
Yeah, Coach, I'm just curious, are injuries a byproduct of football at this time of the year when you're getting your football team prepared for the season? Or is there anything that you can do to maybe limit the exposure to that as a football coach while still remaining physical in practice?
Yeah, that's the unanswerable question. I mean, like how do you play football, practice football without getting injured? The guy that figures that out is going to be worth a lot of money, because you can't do that. You have to be smart, you have to be calculated, you have to know your positions. But I mean, injuries are part of football year round. It's not like this time of year. We don't really do anything different this time of year than we do in spring. We don't do anything really different this time of year than we do in November and December. Injuries are part of football. So we've been lucky so far. We haven't had like significant injuries, but we have a lot of guys that are soft tissue, beat up, banged up, and we're trying to get them back.
Going off the injuries, what is Jared and Chaz, each of them, dealing with, and just what they look like at this point in the week?
Jared's doing well. He's been dealing with Achilles tendonitis. He's been great. He's worked on the side. He's been able to push. But it was able to do some things yesterday, and continues to ramp up his exposure and ramp up his reps. So he's doing well. Chaz is dealing with the soft tissue hamstring he's dealt with before, but he's been able to do some things too. He did more yesterday, and they'll do a little more today, but both dealing with some nagging injuries.
Yeah, with the lack of depth, how much of that is because of the transfer portal and guys are just leaving the program more? And two, how much easier is it for a freshman now to find themselves in a position to help you guys from a depth standpoint, because there is just less of it at the upper levels?
Yeah, I don't know if it's transfer portal or the deterioration of football. Could be less people playing. High schools not having as much of an opportunity to develop kids because their practice regimen and practice schedule is tougher. It's a trickle up effect. So we get the guys coming from the high school level, but do we have the same number of players? So you can't blame the transfer portal for that. I think we lose some continuity in terms of guys that have been in the program multiple years. Therefore, your next statement of making it easier for a younger player to play, I don't know that it's any easier, because he's up against guys that come out of the portal, but we have less guys that know and execute our system. And we're not even really considered a portal team. I mean, I don't know how many we've averaged over the last 4 years. I can't imagine it's even double digits. I mean, we don't have many guys coming from that. So, but it's not as much quality depth that I'm used to, but we probably have more than a lot of people.
Kirby, can you provide an update on Jordan Hall, what he's dealing with? Did he have a setback of some sort?
Jordan Hall was coming back, starting to run from his, what was the exact word there? He had a stress fracture in his tibia, and he is now dealing with the exact same thing on the other leg. So the other leg had the same thing that was strange for it to occur, but he didn't acknowledge it until he started running and he was coming back from the first one. So we had to fix the other one, but he's on a good timeline. It's not a long-term deal, and now he actually knows what to expect because he's had it done to the left and the right. So I don't know the order of those, but it doesn't matter. He had the other one fixed. He's going to be back, and we don't know the exact timeline for that, but he's been in great spirits, and I'm just glad they found it when they did.
Kirby, you've spoken at length about the importance of explosive play margin through your first several practices. What have you seen from both sides as far as being able to create explosives and prevent them?
I've seen both sides of it. I mean, it's one day it's one way, and the other day it's the other way. There's not been a dominant side of the ball, if that's what you're asking. There's been explosives, and then there's not been explosives. And a little bit of that is predicated off of eye control, execution, depth, who's in practice, who's out of practice. But at the end of the day, both units have had glaring moments of like success and moments of not success. I mean, there was a consecutive 4-play stretch by the offense where they had 4 explosives in a row Saturday, but then there were stretches where they didn't. So, I mean, it's like every year. I can't sit here and tell you that one side of the ball has been explosive and the other side has given them all up. It's a balance.
Speaking of explosives, I think over the last few years you all have had more explosive runs than previous years, despite running the ball a little less. Is it kind of an example of not only opening up the offense, but when you still retain a physical style, it allows you to do multiple things, not just passing?
Yeah, I would have thought before you said that we had less explosives running than we have in the past, but maybe that's just when you start getting to the big numbers. We do have a lot of 10 to 12 yard runs, but we didn't have the home runs, the long runs that historically we've had, which are like another category of explosive, more explosive. But it's something that we pride ourselves on, and to be honest with you, you're not going to be an explosive passing team because explosive passes happen off play action. And you can't be an explosive passing team on play action if you can't run the ball. So the balance of those two is really critical. We've been more explosive passing the ball in the last 2 years than previous years. A lot of that has to do with the skill players, has to do with the quarterback, has to do with how the coordinator calls the game. But we certainly need to be explosive in both. I think we've got the backs to be an explosive run team. We've got the perimeter blockers to be an explosive run team, and we've got the offensive line to be an explosive run team. And I hope that we're more capable of longer explosives, meaning when we get through there to 10 to 12, we can turn those into 40, 50 and not 20, 30 yard plays.
Hey, Coach, I know you're still in fall camp, but when you start that prep for Clemson, do you think there's going to be a level of familiarity with that roster, considering there's been a lot of recruiting battles, or at least a lot of players that you've attempted to recruit on that roster that you might be well aware of?
Yeah, I'd reserve that to when we start worrying about them. We got a lot to fix, guys. We were not where we need to be in terms of like depth and enough guys to play winning football. And I'm really so focused on like how we can get better today and how our team can get better, and that that's down the road.
Yeah, what have you seen out of freshman running back Nate Frazier, and what sort of makes him different from the other guys that you have in that room?
Well, I don't know that we know that yet. He's certainly a guy that's trying hard to learn, to understand. I don't think he's ever had the detail of, on this run, this is your key. He gets the ball and runs. And there's a lot to our blocking schemes in terms of who is he reading, who is he looking at, what are his steps, what does he have to do in protection. He's got a lot to learn in terms of, he didn't go through spring. So his spring is now. His spring was in the summer. So he's got a lot of catching up to do. He is an explosive kid. He's got good track times. He's got good speed. He's got great toughness. He's got a little ball of energy. But, there's a bunch of guys in that room they're doing a great job. Chauncey's doing a great job. The young kids, White's doing a good job. I mean, those guys are all doing a great job, and we need them to help us this year.
Kirby, can you give us a couple updates on the running backs? Will Trevor Etienne be available for the Clemson game? And what is the health of Rob Robinson and Branson Robinson? How are they holding up?
Yeah, that room has been really good in camp. They've worked really hard. Cash is a guy that people just don't give enough credit to, and he's a really good back. He's great picking things up. I feel like Trevor's the leader of the room and understands things and does a really good job of setting the tempo and setting the standard. Branson's been great. Rod's been dealing with a little bit of a toe injury that he's dealing with, and then 3 freshmen. So we're looking forward to getting all those guys ready to go.
Kirby, 2 things. One, you were pretty open challenging Carson to become more assertive. Where is he at on that? And then 2, you mentioned that his ability to be effective has a lot to do with the players around him and what they can pick up. What have you seen in terms of the progress there?
Yeah, I think I talked about it a little bit. Like the ones can go out there and execute, get calls, line up. I mean, might not do it just right, but there's not a lot of arrows. There's a good nucleus of 11 guys who've played a lot of football when you count Arian, Dylan, Oscar, Dom, and those guys. But there's not the depth around Carson at skill positions that there's been in the past. And it puts more pressure on him to probably feel like he's got to be perfect, to feel like he's got to make the right decision, the protection check, do this, and can I count on that guy that hadn't done it yet to do the right thing and trust that he's going to do it even though he may be a freshman? Those are things that Carson's, he's got to get familiar with those other guys. And that's the hardest part in the depth is, we count on our quarterback to put us in the right play or make the right decision on so many plays, and Carson does a great job of that. And I think he's had a very detailed, attentive camp. Assertive is not something that he is. He's just not naturally going to go out there and just be assertive vocally. He's assertive in his checks, and he's assertive in his decision making. That's certainly much more important than just what he says to the group as a whole.
What stood out to you about the defensive backs in that first scrimmage, and just where do you feel like that group as a whole is at this point in camp?
Got a long way to go. We don't have a lot of proven playmakers. They have to prove it by how they play. They've got to have better eye control. We got to tackle much better. We did not tackle very well. We didn't run to the ball and punch the ball out at the level we need to. I got a lot of confidence in the players in the secondary. They have to go do it live action, scrimmage this Saturday, practices every day to get where we're going to be really comfortable with them.
Coach, realizing you're in the midst of camp right now, it seems like there's a lot of traction about the all scholarship model coming on pretty fast, and I'm just wondering, you guys are always in the pros of recruiting. How are you managing that when it comes to looking at your 2025 roster? Are you recruiting more guys in anticipation of that, or how are you kind of handling it behind the scenes?
Not really doing anything with it. I mean, we're focused on our team, our roster. We'll have to make some decisions. We have a timeline set apart for like the off weeks, different times in the season when we sit down and look at our roster currently, our roster next year, how that looks in terms of what do we have committed, what do we need, what are our numbers going to be. I think you're referring to the 85 versus the potentially 105, and there's a lot of gray area in that, because you don't have to go to 105. A lot of people may choose to. I don't know that 105 scholarship players is the right way to go about it, because you've got 105 NIL capabilities there. You've got more people that would be unhappy. You don't have walk-ons when you do that, and I don't think it's set in stone yet that everybody's going to rush off and go to 105. That's a huge burden on the budget of the athletic department. And honestly, there's a lot of kids here that I think do a great job for us as walk-ons, and you would be dismissing them to go out and say you're going to sign 20 more high school kids. So we really haven't gone down the path of the numbers yet.
When you talk about the depth of your team, can you identify one or two areas in particular that are most concerning at this stage?
Yes.
Can you identify it with us?
No.
So just wondering, for the helmet and that radio and the helmet, how has that kind of been going in practice and scrimmage last weekend?
It's great. I mean, we do it every day. We do it every opportunity we get. We use it. We use it in scrimmages, and we communicate with the guys. And I think logistically it may be an issue when all the people in the stands, the crowd noise. I'm really interested to see how this is going to work for guys. Can they hear it in an SEC stadium? Because you see a lot of NFL players covering their ears, and they're like trying to really hear it. And a lot of times our stadiums, especially at the national level in the SEC, can be hard. And so there's no rule for that. There's no you got to tell them to be quiet so we can hear it. So that you got to have a plan for how you're going to execute it.
Kirby, what have you seen from Raylan and CJ as they go into that second season, especially with Smile banged up coming into camp?
More comfortable. They've been thrust into the limelight, had to play earlier, probably before they were ready, to be honest. And you grow up when you have to do that. The amount of time, I think you forget sometimes what year they are. It happens to me all the time. I think Raylan and CJ are experienced vets on our team because they're in the upper echelon of playtime and upper echelon in terms of years here, because the majority of our team is young. Even our mid-years, I'm out at practice and I'm thinking man, this kid's already been here a year. No, he hadn't. He's only been here 5-6 months. And you got to grow up fast with the way this thing is now, because young players have to be ready to play.
Yeah, what has Damon Wilson been able to do, especially after noticeably bulking up this offseason?
Damon's been good. He's been able to be a contributing factor more on first and second down. I think learning his assignment, he could go play on third down and play with reckless abandon and do a really good job last year. Now, first and second down, he knows what to do. He understands it. He has better keys. He has better strike. He can hold up against a really physical tackle. He's improved. Just by merely being here and going through the spring, he's improved. He's also gotten a good bit of work with Chaz and some of the injuries we've had there.
Kirby, can you talk about three of the offensive linemen, specifically Jamal Merriweather, Daniel Calhoun, and Jazir Jackson?
Yeah, all three of those guys, Jamal Merriweather, Jazir Jackson, and who was the other?
Daniel Calhoun.
Yeah, they all have gone with the 2s and 3s. Daniel's probably gone a little more at the 2s with Jared's injury and moving guys around, where the other guys have gone with the 2s some and 3s. They continue to get better. They need to. They're still considered young offensive linemen in our program, and that's the hardest place to play besides quarterback in the SEC. There's nowhere you will get exposed more than on the offensive line. So those guys are going to continue to get better and develop. They all three have size on their side.
Got time for one more question?
We want to ask about Jamal Jarrett, kind of his journey here at Georgia and coming in to lose a lot of weight. And how has he done with all of that stuff, and what kind of camp has he had?
John's been good. His weight has been up and down. I think it's something that he knows and he's trying to work on. And he has moments, flashes of being able to help us. And we need help at that position in terms of depth, because we've got injuries at those positions. So I think he's getting better. He's more dependable. He has a little more stamina. But there's still area for improvement, that he's got to be able to play more consecutive snaps. And that's what we challenge him to do each and every day.
Thank you.